light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. The topic I picked for this one, I suppose, it's one of those difficult things where there's a lot of speculation and nothing really for certain, but I don't think that should stop us from talking about it, because it's important that we have dialogue and that we continue to share ideas, and maybe over the next 1,000 years or whatever, humanity will come to a better understanding. And the topic I picked was mortality. And it seems like there are so many people who will do everything in their power to avoid dying. And the first problem I see with that is the forms of life that result. That we are trying so hard to avoid death that we're not really preserving a quality of life. Instead, my position has always been that it's not so important how or when you die as it is how you live in the meantime. In a recent episode, I cited the incidents of a young couple trying to help their young son adapt to the passing of a pet. And the young man took it very well and responded, the reason we're here on earth is to learn how to love. Dogs already know that, so they don't have to stay as long. In a similar sort of way, as an interfaith minister for decades now, the one conclusion that remains constant for me is that life is primarily about the growth of the soul. So it's not as important what happens to a person as what one learns from what happens. Because there are people who have a horrible life and learn nothing, and people who have a wonderful life and learn nothing. And in both cases, there are equally people who have good lives and horrible lives who learn so much that they put everyone else to shame, as if we were all walking through life blindfolded, where these people were having their experience, be it horrible, be it wonderful, and they were learning so much that they left this life a far greater person than they entered. This has become especially challenging for me the last couple months, though, not calling my bluff, so to speak, in terms of my own mortality, because I still remain more ready to go than I am, well, not more than I'm ready to stay, but I'm here because I feel a sense of a job to do, a service to love and peace and harmony and learning that I need to do, a service I need to perform. And I'm not interested in leaving until I have done everything I can do, until I've done all the good I can do. And if that's long or if that's short or however I'm going to die, I really don't care. What matters is whether I do all the creativity and all the good that I can while I'm here. In the early 90s, I met with an astrologer who actually predicted that Sister Who was going to die a martyr's death. And I just kind of shrugged and said, well, I guess we'll find out. It hasn't happened yet, so I really don't know one way or the other. But in the meantime, what's important is that I do all the good I can do. Where this becomes problematic, and I've said all the way through, that at some point, Sister Who will be gone. I'm a physical human being, and my life is not infinite. Part of the things I write and the pictures I create and the photographs and the ways I try to invest myself in other people, these are ways that I try to spend my life creating something that will outlive me. I want to do all the good I can during my life because that's all that gives life any value in the first place. But I've often said that the day will come when I won't have opportunity anymore, when I won't be able to do it. I didn't take this for granted, but I didn't think the time would come so soon. A few months ago, there was a lapse in active production because I suddenly found that my fingers would stop working and I couldn't feel my feet, and I didn't know what was going on. I had total consciousness, but it was like there was a neurological shutdown where I couldn't move my hands and feet properly, and I tried doing the face paint and I couldn't make the details happen, which is why we switched to using sequins for certain things. I still mostly have whatever I need, but it's questionable because there's still something going on neurologically that still has not been diagnosed. I retained complete consciousness, and mentally I was absolutely there, but it was like neurologically everything between my brain and my body was cut off, and I couldn't sense anything, I couldn't move anything, I didn't feel any pain, but it was like there was a disconnect between my brain and my body. And I've seen a number of doctors about it so far, thanks to the provisions that are made in association with my disability income and so forth. But none of them have been able to figure out yet what is going on. My own research pointed in the direction of ALS, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig syndrome. It's and I can't pronounce the complicated name for it, but the abbreviation is ALS. As I read about it, though, I even found a book by someone who was diagnosed with ALS, and he said in his experience, he'd be 90 now if he's still alive, but I'm not sure if he is. I wrote in and tried to find out, but no one's answered. So I don't know if he's lived or died, and I haven't been able to find anything on the internet. But he was saying that in his understanding, the diagnosis of ALS is what they named it when they couldn't come up with anything else, because there is no test that confirms this is ALS or this is not ALS. At the present time, I still ride my motorcycle and I don't seem to be having much trouble, but for a couple months there, I really didn't trust myself on the motorcycle, because I would be riding along and suddenly, with about 1 second's worth of notice, I would have this episode where suddenly my hands and my feet wouldn't move, and I couldn't determine a sense of balance. The motorcycle was moving fast enough that it would maintain gyroscopic action. The good news is that none of these episodes lasted longer than 30 to 60 seconds. And after that, I would regain total control and everything would be fine. So it was scary but not dangerous, because the motorcycle had gyroscopic action and I was in no danger of crashing or anything else, as long as nobody crashed into me during those 30 seconds. And I was essentially just cruising down the highway and everything was fine. It's never happened in a small situation in traffic where there was anything I had to do or any car I had to avoid or anything. So in that sense, because I remained fully conscious, I eliminated epilepsy from, that it was not any form of epilepsy, but there's something going on neurologically, and I don't know if I will always be able to do the face paint and always be able to put on the ritual garb and be Sister Who. There may be some time before I'm gone from this world in which I'm no longer able to do this work. And I hope that doesn't happen, or that if that happens, I can find someone who will step in and do the face paint for me so that I can continue to speak and, kind of like Stephen Hawking, who had ALS also, that to the end of his life, he was a university professor giving lectures, but he couldn't move his body. And he couldn't move his arms or anything else, and yet through the assistance of a computer he was able to give collegiate lectures, and it was this incredibly brilliant man, but he was unable to move his body or communicate. The quirk of this book that I read by a gentleman who had ALS is he said that it's largely and this is just his opinion, because he's not a doctor and he's not a medical professional, and neither am I. So this is just an opinion, just a possibility that's out there. He suggested that ALS is tied to toxic elements within the body. And I thought, well, I should probably eliminate those from my body anyway. And that's where I began checking into all sorts of things. And I talked with a doctor recently about doing a test to confirm whether there are traces of mercury or lead in my body. God knows where they came from. But at one time, the dentist, American dentistry or United States dentistry was using mercury in some of the fillings that were used for teeth, and I had a number of those when I was a child. I only have one left at this point that I'm going to have replaced, just in case, because nobody knows if it has anything to do with it or not. But it makes sense that if one can avoid it, one should. And if you, instead of a filling that has mercury in it, you can insist on a filling that is non-metallic, that's certainly preferable. And if instead of food exposed to pesticides, one can opt for organic food, then certainly that's better. All these different things might add up to a body in more pristine condition, and I'm working on that as I can, but I don't know if in another month or two this might happen again, where I have a neurological condition that prevents me from dressing in my ritual garb, doing the face paint, and becoming Sister Who for the world in anything more than just a linguistic fashion on my word processor on my computer. I will still be able to type and everything, because I can do that in a wide variety of ways, but I won't be able to appear if a neurological condition sets in. And ultimately, to this day, they still don't know for certain what causes ALS. They still don't know for certain what causes MS. And there's a long list of other neurological conditions. And I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like my friend Dr. Jean Parker said when I had her as a guest on the show many years ago. The problem with disabilities is that everyone is a candidate. You never know when it might happen, and when what you're doing today, even if you didn't take it for granted, you still won't be able to do it tomorrow. The frustrating thing with all this information I'm acquiring is that even if I figure out what's going on and why and so forth, that I still won't be able to prolong my life, beyond whatever time it's normally going to last. There is no infinity when it comes to physical bodies, and consequently, we do what good we can while we can, but at some point we do run out of time. My dogs run out of time, I run out of time. There is just a finite amount of time. It reminds me when I was watching the television series Babylon 5, getting toward the latter part of it, and one of the lead characters is told that he is being given an extra 20 years to live. And of course, that 20 years goes by so fast. And the person he loves says to him, "Oh my God, has it really been 30 years already?" Or responds, she doesn't say, "Oh my God," but responds with surprise. Has it been, excuse me, I misspoke. Has it been 20 years already? And so they decide how they're going to spend their last day together and what she is going to do from that moment on to remember him fondly, understanding that at some point her life will end as well. I do what I can for as long as I can, as much as I can, and we're in the very near future, we hope to be recording episode number 500, which I don't know if any public access show has ever gone that far before. And it doesn't matter, and it doesn't mean I'm going to stop. As long as I'm alive, I'm going to continue. But I don't know how much I will be allowed to continue. I don't know if some neurological condition will set in, and I will be unable to manifest as Sister Who anymore, kind of like Stephen Hawking did. I'll share whatever wisdom I can for as long as I can, but I don't know what resources will be available to me. And again, it's not so important how or when I die as how I live in the meantime. But what I'm trying to say in all of this is that each of us needs to come to terms with our own mortality and to accept that we are here for a limited amount of time. We do what we can for as long as we can. We do whatever we choose to do. We exercise freedom. We become intelligent. We do whatever. Amassing money doesn't matter because the money, no one's financial statement is read at their funeral. It doesn't matter how much money someone had or lost or gained. What matters is the love and the kindness and the goodness that they put into the world during the time that they had. And so a lot of it in coming to terms with my own mortality is reaching beyond, picking something bigger than myself to which to commit my life. In my case, I committed my life to other personal and spiritual growth, to doing whatever good I can, to teaching people about love, the only exception to the witticism about power, that power corrupts and power corrupts absolutely, except in the case of love. Love doesn't corrupt, and it brings all the other powers into balance. And that's the other corollary to that statement that people need to remember and need to learn and need to repeat over and over and over. Love is what matters. And it kind of reminds me of the final statement of my spiritual godmother, Sister X, that in the end, when everything is done, love is all that matters. But it's not a pretense of love. It's not smile and be nice and pretend that we love you or say that we love you. It's authentically, genuinely, truly loving, standing by someone in their hour of need, making sure they have what they need to deal with their challenges. Knowing when you love something, you want that thing or that person or that animal to experience the greatest life that they can, the greatest fulfillment, the greatest development, the greatest everything that they can. To live in happiness, but not just to live in a blissful kind of narcotic state of always being high, but to have what they need to have the greatest quality and dimension and deepest experience and most empowering experience of life that they can. This is a bit of a tangent, but in the same way that when I was a child, no one understood autism, there are new discoveries coming out about cannabis at the present time. And, in childhood, the marijuana growing wild in the field was something that people used to get high, to escape from the lives that they did not otherwise love, to escape from something that was oppressive to them. And in the modern age, in the current time, not the modern age, but the current time, we're finding out all the different things that derivatives from marijuana will treat and empower people and let them live quality, beautiful lives. And it should not be determined by the politicians whether or not they can be healthy. At the same time, it's relying upon those individuals who want to be affected by marijuana, that they do so in a responsible and intelligent way. We don't do certain things you don't do while you're driving down the road. It's just not intelligent. Whether it's putting on your makeup or counting your change or texting, sending text messages, or smoking marijuana and getting high, being drunk, being under the influence of any other substance. There are certain things that do not go well with operating a motor vehicle. That being said, there are situations in which each of those substances is empowering to the people who use them. What we need is complete information and complete freedom to make the choices that need to be made so that quality of life can be magnified during the time that is available. If you don't have quality of life, it makes more sense to end the mortality prematurely. If you don't have quality of life, but you hope to have it, it makes sense to extend it. What is somewhere in the middle of all that is everyone working together to make sure that absolutely everyone has the most quality of life they can have. That we don't allow them to remain stupid, but we encourage them to become intelligent. That we don't allow them to remain sick, but we encourage them to remain healthy. And if that means using a method or a substance or something that is somehow out of the norm for us, we give them the freedom to at least try it. And it kind of reminds me of a movie I saw many, many years ago about, and I don't remember what the movie was called, but it wasn't a documentary. It was it was fiction, but it was based on reality, and I can't remember the word for that. But essentially, it was a young man who was epileptic, and what the mother eventually found out is that there was a way that his diet could be modified that would prevent him from having seizures, and or that might prevent him from having seizures. It was a method discovered by Johns Hopkins University, and the woman who oversees the program there was the woman who played the doctor within the movie. And at least twice during the movie, they have her looking right at the camera and saying point blank, "Win, lose, or draw, I've never met anyone who was sorry they tried." And I thought that was such a brilliant way to say it, because they were not making a claim that it would. But then at the end of the movie, they showed you like 10 different people who were cast members in the movie playing different roles, who were in fact epileptics, who had used the Johns Hopkins answer and managed to go without seizures for an extended number of years. And as she said, win, lose, or draw, I can't think of anybody who was sorry they tried. They, at no point in the movie did they ever guarantee that it would work. And yet, because it wasn't guaranteed to work, the alternatives that this boy was experiencing were beyond horrific. And the medical system with which this woman was interfacing was positively insane. She wanted to at least go to Johns Hopkins to at least try and see if it might. And lo and behold, it did in her case. It won't work for everyone, but as that woman said, win, lose, or draw, I don't know anyone who's sorry they tried. The traditional medical establishment wants to have cornered the market on answers, and yet in fact they haven't. And that point was really brought home to me when I was sitting in a doctor's office and I found a magazine of medical articles and such, and there was an article by a doctor in Australia who got out of medical school, became a doctor, and was shocked to discover that fully 50% of the time that his colleagues did not know what was wrong with their patients. They were making their best guess, they were doing the best thing they could, but they really didn't know. And with that, the medical system still wanting to have a hold on who lives and who dies. And on a common sense level, I keep saying, we treat our dogs better than that. If we know they have a terminal illness and there is no hope and there's no quality of life, we let them go. We should have at least as much decency for our people, to have accepted our mortality enough that when the quality of life has gone, we can, with dignity, accept a dignified exit from this world and allow those we love to do the same. Not that we kill them without their permission, but that everyone is given the ability to state their wishes ahead of time and to have those wishes respected. That in this situation, I'm not going to live forever. I want to go with dignity, and I want it to be handled in this way, in this whatever fashion, and to put their wishes in writing. In a similar way, the medical system wants to play God, and it just crossed my mind again, so we'll throw it in here. I stumbled on a joke the other day. The difference between God and a doctor is that God doesn't think he's a doctor. And I don't think that's true of the doctor I'm currently working with. But it does seem to be true of an awful lot of doctors, that they want to play God instead of recognizing that every single one of us, including the doctors, are mortal. There's a point at which we go and we have to decide, how do we achieve the greatest quality of life between now and then? And reading this article written by this Australian doctor that I thought was absolutely fascinating, where he said 50% of the time his colleagues didn't know what was wrong. And so in that sense, it needs to be a collaboration. The doctor has special training and has examined all sorts of questions and knows all sorts of options that the common person will never have access to. With that, the doctor still has to have the humility to recognize when there is no answer and when the patient might be right, and that even if the patient doesn't know medical systems or medical tests, the patient knows what it feels like to be them. I know what it feels like to be me. I know exactly how this neurological shutdown during the month of July happened. That for a moment I would get 1 second notice, enough to tell somebody, hold on, and then I would lose the ability to move my tongue. I couldn't move my fingers, they wouldn't hit the keys right. I couldn't feel my feet, so I had to steady myself against the walls and look where my feet were in order to figure out whether I was standing or walking or which way they were moving or anything. And then after 30 to 60 seconds, it would all pass and everything would be fine again. To date, no one has said what it was or why it happened. And I don't know if there's traces of mercury and lead in my system that got in there, God knows how, that need to be removed. And I don't know if that will stop these things, this neurological episodes from happening again. And so I'm kind of throwing all this out there in a very vulnerable way. And I've had people say I'm wise but vulnerable. And yeah, I'm a human being. I have bad days. I have days where I feel totally overwhelmed. And unfortunately, this experience has reminded me that I have days where my neurology might shut down. My whole nerve system might just shut down for 30 seconds. The only good thing I can say, and the reason I'm still driving, is that it doesn't happen often, it didn't last. And for the moment, there's no problem because I'm not having these episodes anymore. But there's enough imbalances going on from time to time that I have to be careful. and I have to watch what the progression is, and I have to keep looking for an explanation. I hope it doesn't turn out to be ALS, but if it does, I want to be like Stephen Hawking and be giving lectures and writing books down to my last day, imparting all the wisdom I can, all the love I can for as long as I can. And however I die, whenever the time comes, it's not going to happen with my help. It's not going to be something that I prepare for, something that I encourage along, or something that I somehow bring into being by my own thoughts. I'm going to be focused on living for as long as I can. And it will come when it comes. Death doesn't need my help. But the point I'm trying to say to all my viewers, in that these shows have become kind of a way for us to talk, at least me to talk to you, even if I don't get to hear from all of you that much. Know that I wish all of you blessings, love, and peace. In the invocation that I used before, may you be blessed with love and peace in the pursuit of your own dreams and in all your dealings with the diversity of humanity around you. I'm here for as long as I can be. I'm doing all the good I can. And when the time comes, I am perfectly at peace to go also. But I don't know what I can promise you in the meantime, other than doing my very best. Thank you for watching.